Hello everyone, welcome back to Ranking. If you just came off the video game ranking video, I promise this one won't be as negative, probably. You also might notice, hey wait, that's a lot of shows, what the heck's going on around here? Well, the answer is quite simple. My animated lists are never really big enough to justify doing a whole list anymore, which is mostly because I spend a lot of more time doing stuff for this channel than I did before. And it's also because I watch a lot more longer shows than I did before. So I thought, why not make this like a full-on review type thing, where every year I rank the shows against the shows that I did last year, and we slowly build up like a full recommendation list almost. So yeah, we're going to start by doing the shows I watched this year, because then we have to catch up on everything I've already ranked. So let's start with that. And the 5 shows we're looking at this year, actually 6, never mind, it's 6, is Batman the Animated Series, the final season of The Owl House, really only the last 2 episodes, because I technically ranked the other stuff last year. Inuyasha, what? Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, which I rewatched this year. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, which was a brand new thing I watched this year. And Adventure Time, which I finally finished after a rewatch this year. So, Fiona and Cake was supposed to be here, but I didn't make it, so it'll get on next year. It's getting a second season, so maybe, I can cash in at that time. Stupid. Scott Pilgrim came out, it's my excuse. Anyway, so this list is pretty easy. A lot of this stuff I've already talked about before, or it has a huge reputation around it. So let's just crack through some of those really quick. Batman the Animated Series, obviously A tier. I think there are some real D tier episodes in there sometimes that are just like really boring. But for the most part, the introduction of every villain is extremely solid, and their reoccurring appearances are mostly good, I would say, with the highlights obviously being the Joker. I also really liked Clock King. Is that weird? I really like their implementation of Clock King in this show. He feels like more of an actual villain than he does in like any other Batman media with him in it that I've ever experienced. Probably because they kind of take him as a joke most of the time. Or they try to make him too edgy. It's one or the other. But that's Batman for you. I do think Batman the Animated Series is definitely worth a watch if you like action cartoons or superheroes. It's a little bit more superhero-y than action cartoony, I guess you would say, but there's definitely some action in there, It's also just sort of, I don't know how to say it, like it sucks you in, The specific art style and the way they represent Gotham City really just puts you in the world. It's a well-done animation, let's just say that much. Also, Robin is there. We love Robin here on the Guilty Flygon YouTube channel, and he's a pretty decent representation of Robin, I would say. Alfred is like peak, so that's how you know it's good. Alright, the final 2 episodes of The Owl House. I think I gotta go A. It's hard because I never remember the names of them because they're all like just vague sentiments, so they can get thanks for watching as like secret code, which is fun, but like so thanks to them was the first one, which we ranked last year. For the Future is the one that I think is way weaker than the others, and then Watching and Dreaming is the finale, which I think is pretty strong overall. Really, my only complaints about the finale is that it feels like all of the side characters, including Amity and Camila, which were like very important in the lead up to this, have basically nothing to do. And it's really sad that we don't get like a final moment with either of them where it really feels like Luz is working together with them to achieve something like cool. Their final scenes together are like, we used memory magic to warp to the skull. Yay, we did it. And that's it. They don't have like a final action scene together, really, because they're all split up with the Kikimora thing, which is, oh, so cool. And I couldn't really care less about that. I think the characterization in For the Future is pretty good overall, and it does set up the Collector really well. And Bellows, as always, is a great villain in that section. But yeah, I wish they did a little more with the side characters. Obviously, it's not probably their fault because they ran out of time, and thanks to Disney cutting the series short. But at the same time, it's a flaw, and I can't overlook it. Watching and Dreaming, very good. I think that story is like really tight in terms of what it has to include and what it gets done. But I don't think I'd change a thing about it. Even if the show got a longer run, I think I'd still want that to be exactly the finale. Is that crazy? Like, I think in an ideal world where we got the full 3 seasons, we would have a conclusion for all the side characters be like 3 episodes, and then this would be the final cap after that. Like, I just need like a closer on their arcs, really. Like, Amity needs to finally confront and defeat Odalia, and Hunter has to confront Bellows, which he never really does. But you know what? That didn't really bug me as much as the Amity thing did, because it feels like Amity, after Hunter became like a part of the group, just like stopped being important. Like she got put on Willow and Gus level. What? No, you can't do that. After making me like her for an entire 2 seasons, that's not fair. Anyway, that's my only complaint, and it's a pretty small one. The horrifying realization of what Bellows is about to do in the finale is great, and I love the way they defeat him. It's great. Okay. Which one should I do next that's really obvious? Adventure Time. I mean, it's an A tier as well. I think rewatching Adventure Time as a more competent adult, because a lot of this was airing in like 2010, and I was like 11. Probably closer to 13 when I was actually watching these episodes. They were probably reruns at the time. But I had a lot... Okay, here's how you know I was a stupid kid watching these, is because I hated Jake. Yeah, like, what? Rewatching the show, like, sometimes Jake does annoying stuff, but usually that's in episodes where he's being poorly written. Like, for the most part, Jake is, like, a great character. And yeah, there are times where Marceline, Ice King, Princess Bubblegum, Flame Princess, Fern even sometimes later, or like some random character they introduce for a random episode, kind of steals the show from Finn and Jake, but I don't think that's actually a bad thing. Finn and Jake have a ton of episodes focused on one or the other, or both of them together specifically, so I feel like the amount of time the show spends away from them is warranted, you know what I mean? Especially because there are so many seasons of the show. And there's so many iconic moments that are like burned into my mind. Pretty much everything to do with the Lich, other than the Farm World Lich. I don't really care about Farm World. I know, it's a fun concept, but in the world of multiverses everywhere, Farm World feels a lot less special and also interesting. I think they could have gone in a more interesting direction with it, essentially, is what I'm saying. But the Ice King stuff still hit. The Marceline and Bubblegum stuff was actually great. I was thinking it was more of a... In my memory, it was more of like a subtle thing, but like rewatching it, it's like, no, not really. That was just me being a kid and not really understanding what was going on. The Jake Shapeshifter stuff was stuff that I actually used to really despise as a kid, and like Jermaine. But I've come to appreciate it a lot more now. And Jake as a character as a whole. So yeah, great show. Some really great standalone like episodes, and the main arcs of the characters are all really well formatted, I would say, to the type of show that it is, which is like somewhat serialized, but mostly episodic, which is like kind of an interesting thing to thread, but they do it. Also, Elements is my favorite miniseries, so let me know if you like or resent that opinion. Maybe you like Stakes better. I could understand that. If you like Islands better, I'm not sure what's wrong with you. Don't take that seriously, but kind of take it seriously. Okay, Scooby-Doo Mystery Inc. I think that's a solid B. This is the opposite of Adventure Time, where I really loved this as a kid because I liked Scooby-Doo when I was like a really young kid. So when I got a little bit older and they put out a Scooby-Doo show for a little bit of an older audience, I was like, hey, perfect. And I still really do like the way they represent the gang in this show. Except Scooby, actually. I don't really like how they represent Scooby. But like, what are you supposed to do with him in this kind of a show, you know? The Scooby, Shaggy, Velma love triangle, and I know that sounds bad, but it's like a love triangle in the way where it's not really a triangle, and also it's not all romantic love either. Kind of gets on my nerves after a while, and I do think the show loses a little bit of steam like halfway through the second half, after the gang gets back together, after they split up. The ending, great. The build-up to the end of season 1, really good. And I think the introduction of season 2 is also very good. I think that's how it's split. I honestly don't remember because I watched it on like a streaming service where it was just like go, 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 go. Anyway, halves. The start of the second half, the end of the second half, the end of the first half, and most of the early adventures are like just okay. I think the middle of the second half is a little bit meh, which is worse than just okay. My metrics are a little bit confusing, sorry. But overall, it's a really fun show. Goes off the rails, but in a good way is the best way I can describe it. And I do really like the characterizations of the gang in this one, because sometimes it's really easy to get them wrong, you know? It's really easy to make Fred like some kind of like jock that's really abrasive and stuck up, or the same thing with Daphne being like a drama queen or something like that, where it's just not really how it works. Anyway, Scott Pilgrim takes off. Another solid B. It wasn't the Scott Pilgrim we wanted, but it was the Scott Pilgrim we needed. And that's the best way I could describe it. I do think it's good, and I had a lot of fun with it. I just think the middle of the show is like really drags in comparison to the start and the end. Like the episode with Lucas Lee, Todd, and there's one more after that. What is that one even about? I liked the Kim and Roxy episode. I didn't really care for the Lucas Lee episode. I didn't really care for the Todd episode. What's the one that comes after that? Well, whatever it is, I think those three in the middle were the ones that really made me go, oh, is this going to be the rest of the show? But then it's not, and it picks up again, and I'm all on board with all the weird time travel shenanigans, with Goose. I like all of that. Julie becoming an evil, like, villainess. Awesome. Matthew Patel putting on a musical. Great. I like all that stuff. I think it works really well. It's just a shame the middle is like a little lacking, but oh well. It's like a microwaved Hot Pocket. I've never actually had a Hot Pocket, but pizza, what do they call them? Pizza Pop, where like you don't quite microwave it enough, and then like the middle's still a little cold, but like everything else is really good. That's what it's like. Anyway, the last one to rank is Inuyasha. Now, last year I watched Urusei Yatsura, which is the first series by Rumiko Takahashi, who's very profound in the anime space, apparently. I'm not talking from first-hand experience here, obviously, as a guy who's watched like 4 animes. Inuyasha's the 4th one. But you can definitely tell, like, it's the start of a lot of these, like, really influential anime tropes with Urusei Yatsura. And a lot of the episodes are, like, laugh-out-loud funny for me, which is not something that usually happens. So I really enjoyed it. And I thought, hey, why not go to the next show? Let's watch Inuyasha. So I've been watching Inuyasha with my sister, who apparently watched it when she was younger. It's a B-tier show, for sure. Right now, we are in the middle of the most grating filler arc I've ever experienced in any piece of media, where every episode is a pointless adventure that barely develops the characters or sometimes completely contradicts their characterization, which, that's terrible, but it's a filler arc and eventually you're going to get out the other side and you're going to get the show you've been watching up to this point. That show that I was watching up to that point is fine. It's not anything like super outstanding. It didn't change my opinion on anime in the same way Urusei Yatsura kind of did, where I was like, oh, it's not just the same thing but like slightly tweaked with a new premise. It's not everything is like not every isekai is like the same thing but like a slightly different character got isekai'd. Not every classroom romance show is the same thing except the dynamic is slightly different. This feels like the stereotypical like shonen battle anime, which is probably because it influenced a lot of those tropes. I'm going to assume, again, I'm not an expert by a long shot. But there are a lot of times where it's like, Inuyasha learned a new ability. Now every enemy knows that thing, so he can use that ability on them. Like, he learns a sword slash that can break magical barriers. And then suddenly just regular enemies have these super strong magical barriers all of a sudden. It's like, well, good thing he learned that special sword slash. It's like, you never run into an enemy with a barrier, aside from the main big bad that he learned the technique to try to take down, before he learns the technique to take those things down. It just feels a little contrived. And I do think the setup to the relationships between the characters, if you don't know Inuyasha very well, which I don't blame you, it's old, there's a main love triangle between Inuyasha, a priestess who he used to know before getting sealed away for like 100 years, who's now dead, but you know how it is, like, she comes back, and then Kagome, who is the girl in the picture, who got transported to this world from the future and is actually the ancestor of that same priestess that died but came back. So now it's like, who will Inuyasha choose? His old love or his new love? But it's honestly handled pretty well. I think it could be a lot worse. I just wish that Kagome and Kikyo, who is the priestess, got to actually like talk more, because mostly what it is they talk to Inuyasha and Inuyasha's like, yeah, I probably should choose you, and then the other one is watching from afar like, maybe Inuyasha's better off with her. And that's a simplification, obviously, but that is how it feels sometimes. So yeah, it's pretty good. I think the characters mostly hit. I hate Shippo, which is saying something, because I actually liked the child character in Urusei Yatsura at 10. I didn't mind him. Shippo is just completely pointless and annoying, and he only hinders the stories that he's relevant in, unfortunately. The only good thing I can say about him is that he doesn't have the most annoying voice, and the episode he's introduced in has the coolest character design in the entire series in it. I really like He-Ten, I think is his name. The Thunder brother that's like really... not the Thunder brother who's going bald, the other one, if you know the show. He's got like a trident and like Hermes shoes with flames on them, and he shoots giant lightning bolts and flies around and kills people for fun. He's like an actual like scary, competent villain. And compared to the actual series villain, who is Naraku, who's a guy who just like sits around for the most part, I liked him way better, but oh well. So yeah, that's kind of the list for this year. I think the best of this year has to go to Batman. I think we all kind of saw this coming, because the reputation behind Batman the animated series is like crazy. But really, it gave me some of the most interesting, introspective episodes I think I've had from a cartoon show ever. Avatar's a close second, but I think that show is more about world building, where this show is more about character analysis, and they both do those things extremely strongly. So yeah, that's the list for this year. Now I'm going to quickly go scan my other videos, because I didn't want to do this before I did my ranking this for this year, because I didn't want to have my opinions soured by this other stuff. So I'm going to go quickly put everything back in the tier I originally ranked it, and then we'll see where I want to put all this stuff in comparison to it. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm just going to put Gravity Falls in A on camera, because technically I haven't ranked it before, because I watched it well before I started doing these ranking lists and hadn't rewatched it until very recently. So I could have put it on this year's list, but it's like literally I'm still in the middle of it right now, so I haven't. But I think A tier is probably good based on everything that I know about the show and how it's been going so far, how I still feel about it. This is what the tier list would look like if I sort of balance it out between all the years. Funnily enough, I ranked Owl House as my favorite show 2 years in a row. I didn't even realize I did that. So instead of best of the year, because it's this is cumulative, we have Avatar, Batman, and Owl House in S tier. Honestly, I think that's mostly fine. I think the only change I would make is to probably move Owl House to A tier. Because these shows are like transcendent. Like, I don't know how else to say it. They are like worlds that I get sucked into. Whereas the Owl House is a fun show, and I really like the characters, but it is a show where I'm always like, yeah, okay, I can see why the writers did that. Whereas in S tier, I'm like, oh my god, they actually did that. You know what I mean? It feels like these are on a tier of their own, basically. So while Owl House is a great show, and it was my show of the year 2 years in a row, I think I got to knock it down a little bit. But we're going to be knocking down a lot of stuff a little bit, so let's start with that. At the very bottom, I think Brand New Animal and the Bee and Puppy Cat Lazy in Space have to move to D. If you haven't watched my videos about these ones in the past, basically my thoughts are Brand New Animal is a cool concept, and the animation's sick, and I like Michiru as well as the next person, but the actual story is kind of disappointing, and the ending is bizarre. And as someone who's actually watched 3 more anime since this anime-ish thing, I'm convinced that they could have done something better than... I don't even know how to describe it. It's like, oh, but actually the animal people are like, there's some sort of like gene cult about like eugenics, and yeah, basically Michiru is like barely important. Like, there's the arbitrary thing of like, oh, her specific power is able to stop the big bad guy, but she doesn't actually like fight the big bad guy, really. She doesn't even really contribute in that final episode. It's all Wolfman, who I couldn't care less about most of the time. He's fine as a side character, but they treat him like he's the main character, and there's an argument that he's meant to be like a co-lead, but he never gets any emotional development, so it just doesn't work for me. Any meaningful emotional development, anyway. Like, he has the whole, like, grumpy old man takes care of young girl arc with Michiru, but it's not anything special in that sense. And Lazy in Space has made itself a worse show. I don't know if it's really worthy of D tier, but relatively compared to the rest of the list, I would say it definitely is. It's a show I have a lot of problems with. The original Bee and Puppy Cat felt like it had a really strong arc for Bee and Puppy Cat, where they start out kind of at odds with each other, and Bee is very immature. And Puppy Cat is also pretty immature as well, but in a different way, right? Where Puppy Cat is pretending like he knows everything perfectly. And by the end, the series finale of the show was them finally, like, really trying to understand each other. And it felt like such a poignant moment. It's like, okay, now they understand each other. Now we can, like, start to build on their relationship. But that's, like, completely gone in the remake. Puppy Cat is, like, a huger asshole after the point where they were supposed to have that sort of, like, coming together moment. And it just does not work for me. So, unfortunately, I have to put it near the bottom of my list. Another show that is crashing down the list is Horimiya. This was a show I moderately enjoyed. I got into it from clips on YouTube, which looked funny. And I think the relationship between the two main characters is actually really strong. Those moments where it was just these two, I genuinely quite liked. As soon as they started introducing the side characters and giving them entire episodes to themselves, I was like, what are we doing? The show only has like 12 episodes or something, and they devote like half of them to random side characters, which were probably important in the original manga, which I obviously never read, but are like super unimportant to the actual story the show is telling. And then the main characters come back at the end of the series, and they're all like graduating, and it's meant to feel like this big thing, like, yeah, look at how far all of these characters have come. And I'm like, totally. It feels like I basically got robbed of the main storyline for the latter half of the show. And now guess what? This is why it's dropping so much. They're releasing a pseudo sequel series that just retells all the stuff they cut out from the manga. It's like, why did you cut it out originally? Clearly I'm not the only one who had this problem, and I don't even, like, this isn't even a thing where the show originally got canceled before it could get to the final arc, you know what I mean? Like a show like Clone Wars that got canceled before it could do its final season. It getting its final season and being able to close out its story is good. This is like they've already ended the story and now they're trying to fill in the middle of the story. How is that supposed to work? How are you supposed to, like, I don't know. It's a terrible shame. And maybe one day I should probably read the original manga, but I feel like it won't quite hit me as hard because I've got the best moments spoiled for me and lost all of the build up to them, which feels so sad. The same is somewhat true of the Urusei Yatsura reboot, which takes like the highlights of the original run of the show that I liked and plays them without the context that builds up to them. That was my main problem with it. I don't think it's quite as bad as these because there's at least some level of building to a better relationship between Lum and Ataru. And the show is less focused on being like a story-driven, we're going to a specific point. And it's more so like episodic comedy. So I feel like it doesn't quite hurt the show as much as it does some of these shows for having weirdly placed arcs and story structure in general. Am I moving anything else down to C? Relatively, I think Rapunzel has to go down here. This is another show where I really like some of it, but a lot of it I don't. The whole Cassandra thing that they build up for almost the entire show feels like it's going to be so cool when it happens. And when it happens, it's pretty cool. But then after that, they just don't do anything with it. And then the main villain is some guy we've never met. And he's like been hinted at before, but I do not care about him. Really, the final battle should have been with Cassandra. And we should have had them finally make up at the very end. And it seems like Cassandra's killed Rapunzel. But no, she gets to come back to life thanks to their like sisterly bond, quote unquote, because for Cassandra it's definitely implied to be a little more than that. But anyway, that would have been way more satisfying. Unfortunately, we didn't go there. It's a little sad. But There's some great songs. If you're going to take anything from this video, listen to the Tangled animated series songs, because they're real good. Real good. Am I moving anything else down? This is tough. Well, let's go to A tier first and see if that changes my mind, because I know some of these aren't staying up here. Animaniacs is definitely moving to B tier. It was A tier relative to the list I put it in A tier, but as it stands, it's mostly entertaining and the music is really good. But I definitely have forgotten like 80% of the episodes at this point. And so I feel like it's not quite as standout as A tier would imply. Probably the same for the original Bee and Puppycat. That final episode, and the comedy is mostly good, that final episode is like really strong, but it is only like, it ends on a cliffhanger, and I can't help but like, I can't help but think of what comes next with the sequel series / reboot. When we get to the ending now, which I try to keep my feelings of like contamination out of it from some other different thing. But, you know, it's really hard in this case. I still do think it's a great show, though. B tier is not like a bad show or even like a mid show. It's like a good show. Here, I'll rename the tiers. That's probably warranted. A tier is great show. B tier is good show. Good show. C tier is flawed show. D tier is... Huh? What happened to this show? There we go. Yeah, okay. With that in mind, flawed show, I think we can populate the quote-unquote C tier a little bit more here. I think Mystery Inc. can probably go here. I think... no, I think it's gotta just be Inuyasha and She-Ra. For very specific reasons. She-Ra has a lot of episodes that are pretty much pointless, and I feel like they went a little too hard making Catra evil to then redeem her. And it's obvious the show is going to redeem her eventually because, you know, they give us a whole, like, we spend a lot of time with Catra, okay? And I do like a lot of the premise of the show in terms of, like, the heart of Etheria and stuff is very cool. And the lore around She-Ra, and really just the character dynamics are probably the strongest part of it. But the plot being somewhat flawed and a lot of episodes that feel very skippable or like something should have probably happened in them, but it didn't. I think it can land in here. It has 5 seasons too, which if this show was like 3 seasons, I don't think I'd have as much problem with it. It just feels like there's a little bit of bloat with some of the episodes. Inuyasha is also in here because of the filler arc I'm going through right now. That's the biggest flaw. Like, if for She-Ra there's some random episodes that feel just whatever, then Inuyasha has that for, like, an entire season, which is pretty bad, but the rest of the show is only good as well, so it's a little bit different than something like, Steven Universe. We'll get to that, don't worry. Steven Universe got into here because I put Future in A during its year. I have some thoughts. Ursa Yatsura is staying. Infinity Train, I think I can move up to Great Show. Scott Pilgrim staying. Mr. Inc. is staying. Animaniacs is staying. Bee and Puppycat is staying. This is good. I think Distant Lands has to move down because only half of the Distant Lands specials are great. Like, Obsidian and Together Again are great. Like, really strong. Like, peak Adventure Time. Wizard City and BMO are, like, the weird episode you vaguely remember from Adventure Time. And I don't particularly like either of them that much. I don't think I'd ever watch them again. Whereas, like, Obsidian and Together Again, I would probably watch multiple times in a row if I had to. But those two, no. So it kind of evens out into this unfortunate section. But that's kind of what happens when you only have, like, 4 episodes in your special series. We'll see. Maybe they'll release more at some point, and it'll change the ranking. Who knows? I don't think Adventure Time's moving anywhere. I don't think Owl House is moving anywhere. These are both really solid adventure shows with strong casts. Spider-Man's not moving anywhere either. Not as quite as good as Batman the Animated Series, because it's slightly more focused on just having cool Spider-Man action than it is making me think philosophically about the meaning of life. And it doesn't have like a crazy amazing animation style either. I think the style is very pleasing to watch. I just don't think it's like super standout like the animated series is up here. I will say though, as a Spider-Man show, it is my favorite of all the ones I've watched. I could put some other ones on here, but I would want to rewatch them first, so I'm not just, going off gut instinct. The way they characterize the villains is like as close to the comics as you can get without them being like a weird mishmash of traits that doesn't feel like they work. And they are weird mishmashes of traits from the comics, but only the ones that seem to work together. I don't know how they managed it, but the characters in the show are genuinely very good. It's just, it's not quite as profound as the kind of stuff I put in Best Ever. So yeah, it definitely earns its place in great show territory. Gravity Falls, similar thing. Again, this is not like a show that made me rethink anything about my life. Or it's something I'd like view as like, I don't know how to say it, because it is art, right? But it's in terms of like something that I would want preserved in like a museum for generations to come. It's not like something I'd be like, they have to have Gravity Falls. I think Gravity Falls is a really great show, but again, it's on the level of something like Adventure Time, Owl House, Spider-Man, where they are great television, but I don't think they are modern art in the same way as these two. Infinity Train, same way. Unfortunately, it didn't get finished, but I think, honestly, if you just play the seasons in a particular order, like you do Season 1, then Season 2, Season 4, Season 3, that's a fairly cohesive ending to the series that feels like, yeah, there are flaws with the train, and there are tons of flawed people on the train, but we're all going to do our best to work towards a finish we can all believe in. I don't know. I couldn't think of a way to end that sentence properly. Anyway, it's a great show. If you haven't watched it, give it a chance. Hopefully someday we get the latter half of the show that was planned. Please. I would do a lot of things to get that. And hey, I got my Scott Pilgrim animated show that I've been wanting for years, so it could happen. It could happen to you the way it happened to me. Anyway, Steven Universe, I have to talk about it now. This show is so weird in terms of the like reactions to it. I'm not really sure why. Some people are so like vitriolic about this show, and then some people are like outright, I don't know how to even phrase it, crusaders like for the show. And I land somewhere in the middle where I think it's a really great show, and I don't think it deserves the hate it gets by far. But I also don't think it's like world-class art either. It's on the level of these mostly, a little bit worse sometimes. I know people will talk about, but the filler. Oh, the filler. If you hate Inuyasha's filler, surely you must hate Steven Universe's filler. No, actually, after watching Inuyasha's filler, I feel even more justified to say that Steven Universe's filler is mostly fine. The episodes people consider filler are usually like character episodes. There are some where it's like they're character episodes for a character I don't care about. Like there's one for like Mr. Smiley, who's just like a background character who runs a theme park. But even in that episode, there's some level of character growth for Steven or world building for Beach City. which is fine. It's not terrible. And they don't give you, like, literally an entire season of, like, 20 episodes in a row of, like, bad episodes. I think those episodes are fine. I wouldn't even call them good. They're fine. Whereas the Inuyasha filler is genuinely bad sometimes. And the rest of the show is very fun. The way the gem lore is slowly revealed is cool. I think the Rose Quartz arc is very interesting, and really watching the show again really reframes everything you've seen, which is the mark of a good twist, even though in the moment it felt like a bullshit twist. I think they go a little too hard making Pink Diamond evil for what they're going for with her, given that, you know, we're supposed to eventually like her. Then again, I think some of that is because we see her arc in reverse, because we're, like, uncovering the history of who she was. And really, I don't think there's a main character in this show I hate, or, like, even mildly dislike. I think after we defeated Jasper, who was a pretty strong villain, the rest of the villains were pretty just meh. But that wasn't too bad, because the main villain of the show after a certain point was Steven's self-doubt, which, you know what? A lot of people hate Future too. I'm like, what? Because I guess they just don't like to see Steven, this character who you spend a lot of time with and get attached to, go through all of this, like, traumatic experiences. And, you know, I can understand why someone would think, like, there's no way Steven would do this stuff. He's Steven Universe. But that's kind of the whole point, right? So I really like Steven Universe Future. I think Steven Universe is mostly great, sometimes just good. Definitely on the list of these shows. I'd probably rank it at the bottom, and that's kind of saying something. Unfortunately, Steven Universe, Infinity Train, and Owl House all got slightly cut short by their studios. Some more than others, but I still think the shows are great regardless. So yeah, that's my list. I will add new shows to the list when I am finished with them. And then we will talk about those new shows next year for their own ranking, and then we'll talk about how they rank on this one. So that should be interesting for the future. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, then like the video, subscribe. I will, of course, be doing this again next year. If you have any recommendations of shows that could maybe redeem anime for me, you don't really need to do that, because I do like a lot of these shows, even though I've put most of the anime at the bottom of the list. No anime cracked A tier. Oops. I didn't really mean for that, but it's unfortunately been my experience so far. Recommend me a good anime, and I will maybe watch it if I get around to it, because I was supposed to watch Cowboy Bebop for like 2 years now, and I haven't done it for some reason. So maybe I'll do that. I don't know. Okay. Bye.